All right, welcome to a rubber stamp show and tell. I haven't done one of these in a long time and thought about dipping into my collection of rubber stamp magazines and checking one out. Okay, so this is Rubber Stamp Madness, issue number 54, volume 11, November, December 1990. Okay, price $4. Hard to believe, over 30 years ago for this. Unbelievable. But this was the magazine at the time. Okay, now it's still out there, but Rubber Stamp Madness was around. There was Vamp Stamp News, National Stampographic probably, and I think that was it as far as rubber stamp dedicated magazines. Actually, I don't know if Vamp Stamp News was out there. For you longtime stampers, you'll know what I'm talking about when I bring up those magazines. But those ones were much smaller in comparison to Rubber Stamp Madness. Vamp Stamp News was almost like a zine, as was National Stampographic. National Stampographic was getting it professionally printed, but this was the magazine right here. Okay, so let's get right into it. So around 1990, that's when you really started feeling kind of an upswing in terms of just the interest level with rubber stamps. Not quite, hitting the stride that, 10 years later, 2000 was, but I worked for a Stamp of the Hand company in 1990. I started working for them in 87, and she put on the original rubber stamp convention, otherwise known as the Carson Show. And you can feel kind of the interest level based on that show because if you were a rubber stamp company, you tried to get into that show. So, my boss was the one that was coordinating that. So I'd know about things like people being on the waiting list and such, and the expansion of the Carson Community Center. All right, so let's take a look here. All right, I'm just going to do a real quick flip through. I'm going to try not to kind of I don't know, hold on any one of these pages for too long. But we can just get a kind of the gist of, the different companies that were out there. That being said, if you were a stamp company, and you wanted to go to the different shows or the different whatever show at the time, the Carson show. I think there was one going on in San Jose too. I think Rubber Rama, I think it was. You went to those, but you also, advertised in Rubber Stamp Madness. It was real easy as far as your advertising dollars went. You advertised in Rubber Stamp Madness. You went really advertising your local paper probably. But so you can really get the gist of the industry from this magazine too. You can feel it getting new paper. This magazine getting thicker and thicker. With I don't know, practically every issue it seemed. But this is also the big tabloid size format right here. They switched to a smaller one, and then they got, eventually to the magazine format. I like going through these big kind of newspapery ones. I thought they were really cool in terms of just something different, and it felt kind of artsy, having this big format like this. Okay, Stampeteria, Northern California's rubber stamp store. I don't remember that one. Looks like they were right in. Oh, I do remember this one's Pier 39, San Francisco. Ad like that. It was one of those things, and they later turned into one of those pepper stores. Those hot pepper stores. Where everything peppers, right? And it was right in that touristy area. You get stamp stores in touristy areas like that. These, I don't know what the rent was at those types of things, but I remember I knew someone that worked at that store because they would go to the San Jose conventions. AC Doocy, I remember them. Stamp Crazy. Christmas San Diego is Stamp Crazy. I live in San Diego right now. I don't remember them. When I started Stampscapes in 1993, 94-ish, sometimes I'd go and teach at the different stores in San Diego, driving down from Los Angeles. Look at this. I can't even get this whole paper in this frame here, and I've got my tripod all the way up. But yeah, I don't remember those. So San Diego had a few stores: Stamp La Jolla, Stamp Delights, Stamp. Boy, yeah, I don't know. There were several other ones, that came along later on. Portland, Oregon, Works of Heart. Looks like a stamp company. Portland, in that whole kind of Oregon area, had a huge number of stamp stores and manufacturers. So, Rubber Stamp Madness, they go into different little articles here. C Spot Run, talking about another touristy area, the farmers market in Los Angeles. So I had been in that store once. These types of stores, it was real touristy area, so they didn't offer things like workshops or anything like that. I doubt, it would have to be like 1 8-foot table if they ever did something like that. But that was cool having those stores in those types of areas like that. Bizarro, remember them? Graphistamps was one of the bigger stamp companies at the time. Okay, not in terms of, they weren't like on the level of like like a Rubber Stampede or something like that. But it seemed like I saw Graphistamps everywhere. I would go into like a museum gift store or something like that, and there you'd see Graphistamps. They had things like whales and sea mammals and things like that. So if you walked into, let's say, the Monterey Bay Aquarium or something like that, I bet you anything they'd have Graphistamps. And Graphistamps was kind of located, close to there too, like in Carmel here. So I got in touch with them at one point in time. I'd kind of tracked down, the owner when I did a review of their catalog and got in touch with them. You don't find a lot of information on stores that are gone now, even the huge stores, hardly any photographs or any information online. So I don't know. I like going over these types of things right here. Rainbow pads, okay? So in 1990, I don't remember too many stamp pads at the time, okay? Raised stamp pads. It was kind of non-existent. You had recessed pads. People that were stampers weren't using pads back then, okay? Very much. But you saw these rainbow pads coming out, and these I don't think, okay, now these were like flush pads. I don't think they were recessed, but they were flush, okay? And that's because they hadn't figured out how to not have the ink run out of a pad like this. So manufacturers came out with thicker inks or just denser pad materials. StazOn came out much later. But I don't know. I started seeing rainbow pads, okay? So they were, blank pads that they would hand color, okay? So they'd have re-inkers or something like that, or whatever their ink reservoirs, and they would do these rainbow pads, okay? So here you have it mentioned, Timeless Images, I don't remember them. Clear Snap, okay, so Clear Snap made the pigment ink pads. Yasutomo and Company, Stampa Barbara, and Abracadabra. Okay, now Abracadabra, Stamp Francisco, I remember them distinctly because Stamp the Hand carried those rainbow pads. Looks like they have some examples of those pads right here in terms of the impressions made from them. But Abracadabra, really remember them. Like I said, they had, I don't know, like seven different colors, and we carried them all at a Stamp in the Hand for things like warehouse sales. And later on, my boss started opening up like temporary stores and malls where we'd carry that type of thing. But you really had to kind of watch out for rainbow pads. Rainbow pads had a kind of a set lifespan before all the inks would just eventually merge into one another. And you had to be careful to not store them on their sides or anything like that. If you stored them on the sides, it would, the ink would run out. Or if you stored them in the wrong angle, they would all blend together prematurely, but they eventually all kind of merged. And it wasn't one of those things where you can really re-ink them. They weren't really selling re-inkers where you can kind of wash out the ink and then just redo it again, Plus, I don't know, it was kind of one of those things where you used a certain configuration based on the indexing, like a sticker printed indexing or something like that on the top cover of those pads to, I don't know, coincide with it. There were things like, I don't know, Harvest and I don't know, they were all rainbow. I can't think of some of the other names, but I distinctly remember Harvest, Sunset, things like that. But okay, so you often use these with like roller stamps too. I mean, you can use them with any kind of stamp you wanted to, but I remember like roller stamps from some different companies. Oh, here's some different names right here: Dreamscape, Fantasy, Sweetheart. Yeah. Um, Anyway, so those are cool times. That was like rubber stamp technology at the time. Raw stamps, I don't remember them. I remember a lot of the companies that would come around to the Carson show. Mostly Animals, that was a big company right there. The owner from that came from, they used to do dental, like notepads and things like that for the dental industry. I remember reading about her. Really cool mounts, 1-inch mounts. A holiday stamper. Merry Christmas. That looks like the one from a Stamp the Hand, I think. I'm not sure. This is the holiday issue. This must be Marks of Distinction. I have that stamp right there. That was just copyright-free illustration right there. So a lot of different companies made that. But just going into the different holiday stamps from your different companies. Rubber Stamps of America, Ken Brown stamps. Always got my attention, and you always saw those funky Ken Brown stamps being used in the mail art and things like that within the pages of Rubber Stamp Madness, Museum of Modern Rubber. Awesome stuff. She was a professional illustrator, I think, she came from the advertising world, if I'm not mistaken. Great booth setups and everything like that. Saw them at all the California shows. The Carson Show, Rubberama in San Jose, probably San Rafael, things like that. Those early shows like that. I don't know. They were, yeah, you saw the same companies at at all the different shows. Fly By Night Rubber Stamp Company, Ithaca, New York. I don't remember them. They probably weren't going to the shows in California coming out from New York. Sometimes you did, though. You get buyers from all over the world. Maybe not at this point in time, but in the mid-90s when rubber stamp stores were opening up, you'd see buyers from the UK, Australia, Japan, things like that. You know, if you're going to open a stamps company, you really don't go to like the craft wholesale show in LA. You could, like the Beckman show was a separate one from the LA Gift Show, and Stamp in the Hand displayed there. But if you really wanted to see rubber stamp booths, okay, it later became you go to CHA, HA, that type of thing. But you really went to the retail Carson show to see all of these different companies, okay, or a lot of them. Clear copy, design rubber stamps. Okay, now these were all rubber stamps at the time. There were no clear stamps back in these days. The gift that goes on giving. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what that article is about. Look at this, stamping calendars right here. Oh, so the gift that gives on giving looks like you do. You're stamping calendars. Okay, that makes sense. Stampin' Up. Look at this. Okay, so Stampin' Up, just getting started probably back then. Okay. So I don't know. They were already up to a 79-page catalog, but look at their their advertisement right here was just, I don't know, what is that? Like an eighth of a page, black and white. You know what I mean? So, okay, now I changed that. This is just one demonstrator taking out that ad. So maybe I don't know, maybe they were hopping by that point in time. I thought they might have been, I thought Stampin' Up started as a different company though. Later on, I guess they were, up and running by that point in time. The Rubber Room, Redwood City, California. I remember them. Redwood City is kind of in that Bay Area, so they were probably going to the the Carson Show and Rubberama. Stamp Francisco, one of the bigger companies at the time. You know, Picasso, Gaglione. Let's see right here. Good Impressions. Okay. West Virginia. I think I have their catalog. A really cool one. Paper Post. That was Sunan Douglas's store back in the day. She designed for Stamp of the Hand Company a lot of really cool eraser carving style stamps. A color interior spread here. That's what Rubber Stamp Madness started doing at one point in time, just to get some color in there, you know. I think the earliest Rubber Stamp Madnesses were all black and white that I have in this size format. Okay, so the original Rubber Stamp Convention, December 8th, 1990 right here. Look at that, admission $3. It was always really cheap to get in there. And free parking at the community center. That show got immense, right? It got up to about 65 booths, and every square foot of that convention community center, it wasn't even a convention center. That's why there's like room after room after room there. It's because this community center would have like, you know, workshops or something like that. There might be a church that rents out space, weddings in the interior courtyard area, the main hall. You know what I mean? Weddings, everything would go on there. Just small workshops would be in rooms, okay? She kept it there, and it was really, they really outgrew it, you know, as far as the convention went. And she looked all over the place, but you'd have to pay for things like parking and things that you don't think about as an attendee of that. Where at convention centers, like little small companies, you know, like all of these, you know, companies, if you went to a big convention center, you got to pay for things like called drayage, okay? And that would be you go and park at the loading dock, and you have to pay someone to take your booth materials over to your booth, okay? And not only that, you know, attendees attending at a larger convention center, you'd probably have to pay for parking, where Carson was free. So all those types of things came into play, you know, as far as saving vendors money and saving the attendees money, you know. So it was crowded and it was crazy, but you know, it was all to save everyone money, okay? So it got crowded there at the community center where the stamps are. So look at this. These are the different stores that were around at the time, and it looks like there were quite a few right here. Happy Stamper. I taught at you know, some of these stores, but it's just interesting seeing some of the different cities on here listed. And just how many there were at the time. Okay, so this is continued on to the next page. This right here, you know, where the stamps are, I don't know, it got to be much, much bigger as time went on. So you might open the next issue and this listing might be down here. And then, you know, it became bigger and bigger and bigger as time went by. Portfolio, New Jersey. I think they used to make stamps for Stampa Barbara, if I'm not mistaken. Now, this is interesting right here. Make yourself a rubber stamp at Stamp Asylum, okay? Plano, Texas. I was going to say, I thought that was a Gil Borges drawing right here. He was drawing at the Carson Show. So they might have got their drawing done. But you can make your, you know, there are people making custom stamps and whatnot at their... whatever their stores and whatnot, you know. Okay, so GoCo printer, that was one of those early kind of silk screening printers. We used that at a Stamp in the Hand to make things like the buttons for the different shows. From soup to stamps, what does that mean? Imagine cooking with rubber stamps. We're not in the, well, not in the frying pan, but stamping while you're cooking. Stamping while you're cooking. I don't know. I guess stamping something out, you know, while you're making dinner or something like that. Okay, look at this. Stuart Superior. Okay, now that's the company that still makes a lot of stamp pads for different companies out there. You just order what you want from Stuart. I don't think it's called Stuart Superior. I think it's called Superior Stuart or something like that. All Night Media, still advertising in Rubber Stamp Madness. That was a big company out there, a big wholesale company. Judykins right here. But these bigger companies like this, Rubber Stampede, they stopped going to the shows. I don't know if they All Night Media. I don't know if they ever went to the Carson show when I was working for them. They might have, but these larger companies that kind of were basically like suppliers and wholesale, you didn't really see them around at the different shows that I was attending. Like from '87 and on. Maybe the earlier ones, like a couple years before that. Okay, catalogs and review section right here. It goes into just catalogs from new companies, usually advertisers or something like that would, contact Rubber Stamp Madness or send in their catalog to Rubber Stamp Madness, and they might do a little feature on it. Rubber Duck Stamp Company. Yes, hand stamps. Yes, you can hand stamps. Artful Hand. Okay, that's the name of it. Out of let's see, New York. I don't know. Maybe those who carry their stamps. I'm not sure. Colorado Stamp Grounds, Estes Park, Colorado. Interesting. Marvy markers. Everyone used Marvy markers. If you were a stamper at this point in time, okay. And here we are, Posh Impressions right there. D from Posh Impressions, Posh Presents, and Posh Impressions. She used Marvy markers and really put them on the map as far as rubber stampers using those. Like I said, rubber stamp pads weren't out at the time, so we were using the 1500 series of Marvy markers, and then you would usually have your Laplumes and Tombos, usually as secondary markers to color in things, in a more detailed manner, but with a lot of the kind of bolder colors and shape stamps, eraser carvings, and that type of stamp, you would use Marvy 1500 series markers. People these days, I don't know, maybe even for the last 15, 20 years, maybe 15 years, okay. A lot of people have just never even heard of these markers. So they just kind of got lost in the shovel. It's all about things like alcohol markers these days. Judykins right here. Synergistics, Goleta. I grew up near Goleta here. It's interesting seeing a company based out of that area, kind of the Santa Barbara area. Let's see. Repeat business. Gray Cats here out of New York. Signed, stamped, and delivered. I always love the names of the different stamp companies out there. Commotion, Bingle Gels, Graven Images. I remember that name. I might have an image or two from them. Handprints, New Mexico. There was a long time stamp convention in New Mexico. I think it still goes on in Albuquerque rubber stamp events, I think. Same person that puts on the Mesa show. Alice in Rubberland. I used to see them at all the different shows. Sometimes they'd kind of dress up as like the Mad Hatter or something like that at the Carson show. But I'd see him around at Carson and the Las Vegas show. Stamping pen pals, you can advertise in here. Okay, and someone would mention what they're kind of into, and you can become a pen pal. It's kind of funny, people, your pen pals, and their whole address is in there. So I don't know if they're still doing that. Maybe stamp exchanges, things like that, would be in the classified section of Rubber Stamp Madness. I guess you had to put your name in there if you wanted to, an address. They're not going to put like a phone number or something like that. People calling like long distance and say, "Hey, I want to be your pen pal. What's your address?" The stamp mill in the Phoenix area. The stamp mill. right here in Tempe, Arizona. I remember them carrying Stampscapes designs. Here's Alice in Rubberland again here. It looks like they had clothes for their figure or something like that. I don't remember that. Alice in Rubberhand had a lot of the Alice in Wonderland copyright-free illustration stuff. A lot of people loved Alice in Rubberland stamps, and there was only a handful of those pre-existing kind of classic illustrations. So you'd see that a lot in different catalogs out there. Okay, Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers. I was looking at those illustrations and recognized those ones. Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers. A lot of people remember that company. And if you went to the shows, you remember I think it was called The Pit or something like that. Just this big stack of rubber in the middle of their booth that you would sit down and, go through. Denami Designs. Interesting. They kind of came up with their more scripty types of things, but this one right here is these kind of like more stippled style of fish right here. Would see them at like all the shows around the country too. The rainbow pads right here from Clear Snap. So this advertisement right here probably cost like $1,500 at the time or something like that. A big color ad like that. Ranger Industries. A lot of times people don't think of who Ranger Industries is. They think of Tim Holtz or something like that, or Distress Inks. That's Ranger Industries, okay? And I don't think they had like design teams at the time, with like these pads that were kind of marketed around like an individual like that. I don't think at this time. I think it was like, like early, 92, 93, I'm guessing, something like that. 100 Proof Press, always one of my favorite companies. It's changed hands like twice, I think, since then, but they're still out there, and I love um, I don't know, their curated grouping of designs. A lot of old engravings in that line. Gumbo Graphics, another one of my favorites. I have a lot of their designs. Here's a stamp of the hand. Here's some of my old designs. You wouldn't think, that I did like Christmas designs. Here's like these little ornaments here, little ornament right here. Dino Santa. Here's this little Halloween kind of garland, I think we used to call it, something like that. But I used to design things like that. I had some nature designs at this point in time, but not the full line of nature designs that kind of got things started, at a stamp in the hand and kind of kicked off the whole scenic stamping genre. Like I said, I had a small grouping of nature designs back then, but I don't, people might have been doing a little bit of a scene with them, but not too extensively. Classified ads, you'd see for sale, like I said, stamp store for sale in Southern California. Contact RSM for details. Kind of interesting. They were kind of a middleman for selling, probably, for different manufacturers, selling companies and selling stores. But that makes sense because they were kind of the hub for everything that was going on in the industry at the time. Lady and the Stamp, Yorba Linda. This was a company around the Fullerton area. I taught there a couple different times, but she was about, probably be about a 45-minute drive from Yorba Linda to the Carson show, but she chartered like a small bus to take her customers from here, the store, and they would go over to the Carson show. Maybe not every time, but I remember them doing that at some point in time, which is pretty cool. It'd make for a fun little, short trip, where people don't have to drive over there. Stamping Fantasies, home party stamps and stamp supplies. So kind of in the spirit of like Stampin' Up right there. I never heard of Stamping Fantasies though. They probably bought from other companies and just would do like home parties. They probably bought like wholesale. Imaginaire Designs, always a cool company. I don't know of too many people that were doing like, like super accurate, like F-18s, stuff like that. But I always loved that company. And then they had their other company, like Onion Arts or something like that. But Imagineer designs super realistic to scale aircraft designs, hot air balloons, things like that. Old and classic. Inkadinkado, one of those bigger companies at the time, making all kinds of different things. I think roller stamps and things like that. Good Stamp, Stamp Goods, a long time Bay Area, I think. It's either that or Northern. Where's Willits, California? But I'd see them at all the different shows and used to buy from them. They were around a really long time. And when I got into Stampscapes and things like that, I think that's right around the time they retired, kind of in the mid to late 90s, I think it was. But I always liked going over to their booth and picking up some things. I have some insects from them. Okay, but the big spread on the back of every Rubber Stamp Madness, Stampa Barbara always had this back spread right here. And they would, this is color on the front, so I don't know, I guess he didn't do full color in the back, but he would always have a lot of different designs on the back. And this is why he never came out with like a catalog. He'd say, well, all the designs are in the back of the catalogs, but he would buy out a lot of different companies. So, if you were just to go solely based on what was advertised in the back of these, and if you were a rubber stamper, you subscribed to this magazine, so, you would have that. But like people that were just getting into stamping, they wouldn't have like the last 10 years or whatever, I don't know, 5 years of Rubber Stamp Madness. So I don't know. His whole thing was, hey, just get into our stores. And people would do pilgrimages to Stamper Barbara. They carried just about every, stamp company out there, big and small. He would just say, send out whatever X number of your most popular stamps. And if it was a company that was known to sell well in his store, he would just say, when you come up with new designs, just send me 5 of all of them. Okay, just sight unseen. It was really amazing. And if you went to Stampa Barbara, it was really walking into just a wonderland of stamps. And this was, I don't know, this was at their old store. Look at this right here. Okay, so Anacapa Street, this was like back in this little corridor area. And look at this, studios 15, 16, and 20. So they kept having to expand into like stores next to them if they opened up. And they called this one right here Stamp Barbara on Melrose, our convenience store. So Melrose was this really kind of trendy, popular kind of walking area in Los Angeles. But I think he started like spreading out to these different areas just because there weren't too many stores, around at the time. But then as more and more stores started to pop up, it's like, okay, maybe I better get a store in these areas as opposed to this area, hour and a half from Los Angeles, or, like even maybe like 2 hours from Orange County, that whole, kind of LA, greater LA area, that people would drive up there and they would take workshops on weekends and things like that. But it was like a full weekend excursion or something like that. So he started having stores, closer to, the main population. I don't know how many people, there weren't like a lot of, Santa Barbara is really small, so I don't know of how many, stampers there were in that Santa Barbara area. Okay, so it was mostly in a little like touristy area and probably like walking traffic. But Santa Barbara at these times, they had people, flying out there from different states and things like that too. So it was really quite something. But this was their catalog, the back page right here. And it was just, hey, you want to buy these stamps, come on down or something like that. And people did. And it was really cool to go and see. Not a lot of material out there. I've asked Gary via email, who's out in, I think it's called Pictureville or something like that in Palm Springs. He owns like a photography studio. And he just didn't have like photographs of his stores. So if anyone has photographs of the inside of Stamp a Barber or anything like that, please, I don't know, notify me or post it somewhere, because this was really a store to behold. Or if anyone had pictures of, Kathy Lewis and her classes, the one teacher that taught at Stampa Barbara, we'd have loved to see them. Or if you just have memories of Stampa Barbara or any of these companies in here, please comment in the section down below, because there's little to no information on, so many of these different companies, conventions, manufacturers, etc. out there, So it'd be really nice to get a little bit of I don't know, whatever, documentation of, these great entities that are no longer around. Or if they're around still, you can talk about what they were like back in the day. So, Rubber Stamp Madness, fun stuff. Check them out online. And thanks so much for watching.